The blood on Beatrice Grayson's hands would not wash clean no matter how hard she scrubbed, and she had long ago stopped crying about it. She stood in the back room of the Silver Star Saloon in Hachita, New Mexico territory, her fingers raw from another 12-hour shift of washing glasses, scrubbing floors, and enduring the occasional unwanted touch from men who thought her contract of servitude meant she belonged to them in every way. The year was 1883, and freedom felt like a concept from another lifetime, something she had prayed for every single night since Marcus Thornton had purchased her debt 3 years ago when she was barely 19. Desperate and alone after her father died, owing money to half the territory. Beatrice had not always been this broken creature who flinched at raised voices and kept her eyes downcast. Once, she had been a teacher's daughter with dreams of opening her own school, of making something meaningful of her life in this harsh desert landscape. But debt was a noose that tightened with every passing day, and Thornton knew exactly how to keep it cinched around her throat. Every meal, every scrap of clothing, every candle stub she used after dark got added to her account. She would die here, she knew, old and used up, having never paid off what she supposedly owed. The saloon doors swung open with their familiar creak, and Beatrice did not bother looking up from the stack of plates she was washing. The water was cold, her hands nearly numb, and her back ached from bending over the wash basin. She heard Thornton's oily voice greeting someone new, putting on the charm he reserved for customers with money to spend. "Welcome to the Silver Star, friend. Finest establishment in Hachita, if I do say so myself. What brings you to our little corner of the territory?" "Just passing through," came a response, and something in that voice made Beatrice pause. It was quiet but firm, with a warmth underneath that she had not heard in a man's voice in longer than she could remember. "Heard you might have worked for a man good with horses." "Might be. Depends on what you're asking for wages." Beatrice risked a glance through the doorway into the main room. The stranger stood with his back to her, tall and lean in dusty trail clothes, a worn hat pushed back on dark hair. His boots were scuffed but well maintained, and he carried himself with the easy confidence of someone who knew his own worth. She noticed his hands, calloused but clean, resting near his gun belt without touching it, not looking for trouble but ready for it if it came. "Fair pay for fair work," the stranger said. "I am not particular about the amount long as it is honest." Thornton laughed, that harsh bark that always made Beatrice's stomach clench. "Honest? That is a word I do not hear much these days. Tell you what, friend. Name is Marcus Thornton, and I own this place along with a fair bit else in town. Always need good men. You got a name? Cole Yancy." The name settled into Beatrice's mind like something significant, though she could not have said why. She turned back to her washing, knowing better than to be caught staring at customers. Thornton did not tolerate that kind of behavior, said it gave his girls ideas above their station. Never mind that Beatrice was not one of his saloon girls who entertained men upstairs. She was something worse in his eyes, something he owned more completely because of that damned debt. Yancy. Good solid name. Tell you what, Cole, why don't you sit down and have a drink on the house? We can discuss opportunities. Girl, Thornton's voice sharpened as he bellowed toward the back. Get out here and bring us whiskey. The good bottle, not the rot gut we serve the miners. Beatrice dried her hands quickly on her stained apron and retrieved the bottle from the locked cabinet, her fingers fumbling with the key. She hated this part, hated being visible, being looked at. The saloon girls got the admiring glances and the sweet words, false as they were. She got the looks that assessed her like livestock, that calculated her worth in the most degrading terms. She walked into the main room, keeping her eyes on the bottle in her hands. The saloon was quiet this early in the afternoon. Just a few men playing cards in the corner and one drunk sleeping it off at a back table. She approached the bar where Thornton sat with the stranger, set down 2 glasses, and began to pour. "This here is Beatrice," Thornton said, and she could hear the satisfaction in his voice. He always enjoyed showing off what he owned. "She works off a debt to me, keeps the place clean, does the washing, runs errands. Mighty useful to have someone so motivated to please." Beatrice kept her hand steady as she poured, though shame burned in her chest. She felt the stranger's eyes on her and wished she could disappear into the floorboards. What must she look like to him? Hair pulled back in a severe bun, dress faded and patched, face too thin, shadows under her eyes from too many sleepless nights. "How long has she been working for you?" Cole Yancy asked, and there was something in his tone that made Beatrice look up despite herself. His eyes were gray, she noticed, like storm clouds over the mountains. They were studying her face with an intensity that should have frightened her, but somehow did not. There was no calculation in that gaze, no assessment of her body or speculation about what she might be convinced to do for a few extra coins. He was looking at her like she was a person, and the shock of that simple humanity nearly made her drop the bottle. 3 years now, Thornton said proudly. Bought her debt when her old man died. She had nowhere else to go, poor thing. I gave her a roof over her head, food to eat, work to keep her busy. She owes me considerable for all that charity, of course, but I am a patient man." "What is the debt?" Cole asked, still looking at Beatrice. She set the bottle down carefully and clasped her hands in front of her apron. She should not speak unless spoken to directly. That was one of Thornton's rules, and breaking it meant no supper and sometimes worse. "Well now, that is private business between me and my employee," Thornton said with a laugh that did not reach his eyes. "Why the interest, friend? You thinking of making an investment?" Cole finally looked away from Beatrice to Thornton, and she saw something flicker in those gray eyes. Disgust, maybe, or anger carefully controlled. Just seems like a long time for someone to work and still be in debt. Must be quite a sum. Adds up, you know how it is. Cost of living, interest on the original loan. I keep fair books, all legal and proper. Thornton took a sip of his whiskey. "But we are here to talk about you, Cole. What kind of work you looking for? Anything honest," Cole said again, and Beatrice heard the emphasis on that last word. "I am good with horses, like I said. Can break them gentle, train them right. Also know my way around cattle. Can fix most anything that breaks, and I am not afraid of hard work." Beatrice knew she should leave, go back to her washing, but something kept her rooted in place. She pretended to wipe down the bar, moving slowly, wanting to hear more of this stranger's voice. It had been so long since she had heard someone speak with such quiet dignity, such obvious integrity. Most men who came through Hachita were running from something or chasing a strike that would never come. They were desperate or cruel or both, worn down by the harsh land and the harder life it demanded. "I might have something," Thornton said slowly, clearly thinking. "Got a string of horses that need breaking for a buyer up in Silver City. Pay would be $50 for the lot, maybe take you 2 weeks of steady work. Interested, seems fair, long as you provide feed and tack. Done. Girl, you can go now, get back to work." Beatrice nodded and turned away, but not before she caught Cole Yancy looking at her again. Their eyes met for just a moment, and she saw something there that made her heart skip. Concern, she thought, or maybe pity. She was not sure which would be worse, so she hurried back to her washing and tried to forget those gray eyes that had seen her, really seen her, in a way no one had for 3 long years. The afternoon wore into evening, and the saloon began to fill with the usual crowd. miners fresh from their claims, cowboys from the nearby ranches, gamblers and drifters passing through. Beatrice moved among them like a ghost, collecting empty glasses, wiping spills, enduring crude comments that Thornton did nothing to discourage. The saloon girls worked the room in their bright dresses, laughing too loud at bad jokes, coaxing men to buy another drink, another hand of cards, another trip upstairs. Beatrice saw Cole Yancy sitting at a corner table, eating a plate of stew and watching the room with those observant eyes. He did not drink beyond the one whiskey Thornton had poured him, and he politely declined when one of the girls tried to sit in his lap. She wondered where he came from, what had brought him to this dusty nowhere town on the edge of the territory. She wondered if he had family waiting somewhere, a sweetheart back home. The thought made her inexplicably sad. "Stop dawdling and get these glasses cleared," Thornton snapped, appearing at her elbow so suddenly she startled. His hand closed on her upper arm, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. "You thinking you can slack off just because we have a new face around? Get moving or you will be sorry." "Yes, sir," Beatrice whispered, pulling away as soon as he released her. She gathered the dirty glasses from a nearby table with shaking hands, hating herself for that tremor, for the fear he could still invoke with just a word, just a touch. When she risked another glance at the corner, Cole Yancy was watching the exchange with an expression that made her breath catch. His jaw was tight, his hands flat on the table like he was keeping them there by force of will. He looked angry, she realized. Angry on her behalf, which was absurd because he did not even know her, had no reason to care what happened to one more piece of human wreckage in a territory full of them. The evening dragged on. Beatrice's feet ached, her head pounded from the smoke and noise, and her soul felt scraped raw from the casual cruelties that had become so normal she barely noticed them anymore. Except tonight they seemed worse, sharper, because someone had looked at her like she mattered, and now she could not unknow that feeling. Near midnight, when the crowd had thinned to just the serious drinkers and gamblers, Thornton called her over to the bar. She approached with dread coiling in her stomach. Nothing good ever came from him wanting to talk to her this late. "I am loaning you to Potter tomorrow," he said without preamble. "He needs help at his store and he is willing to pay. The money goes to your debt, of course, but it is a good opportunity to reduce what you owe." Beatrice nodded, not trusting her voice. Potter ran the general store and had wandering hands and breath that stank of tobacco. The last time Thornton had loaned her out, Potter had cornered her in the stockroom and only backed off when she threatened to scream. She had not told Thornton because she knew he would not care, might even laugh about it. "Yes, sir," she managed. "Good girl. Now finish up here and get to bed. I want you at Potter's by dawn." She nodded again and turned away, blinking back tears that she refused to let fall. This was her life, had been for 3 years, would be until she died or Thornton tired of her and threw her out. She had prayed so many times for God to send help, to send some miracle that would free her from this trap. But God did not answer the prayers of women like her, women who had sold themselves into bondage, even if it had been for the noble reason of honoring her father's debts. Beatrice was gathering the last of the glasses when she heard boots on the wooden floor behind her. She turned and found Cole Yancy standing there, hat in his hands, expression serious. "Miss Grayson," he said quietly, "I hope you will forgive the intrusion, but I wanted to ask you something." Her heart hammered against her ribs. Up close, she could see that he was younger than she had first thought, maybe 26 or 27. There were laugh lines around his eyes despite the serious set of his mouth, and a scar along his jaw that looked old and well-healed. He smelled like leather and sage, clean and honest. "I am working, sir," she said, glancing nervously toward the bar where Thornton was counting the night's take. "I cannot talk to customers unless Mr. Thornton says so. Then I will make this quick." Cole's voice was low, urgent. "How much do you owe him?" "The real number, not whatever he claims in his cooked books." Beatrice's mouth went dry. "I do not know what you mean, sir." "I think you do. I have been watching him all evening, watching how he treats you. That is not how a man treats an employee, even one working off a debt. That is how a man treats property, and it is not right." "Please," she whispered, fear spiking through her. "If he hears you talking like this, it will go bad for both of us. Just leave it alone. I am fine." "You are not fine. And I cannot just leave it alone, though I wish I could." He took a step closer, and she saw something in his eyes that looked like pain. "My sister was in a situation like yours once. Different circumstances, same trap. I was too young and stupid to help her then. By the time I was old enough to try, she was gone. I swore I would never stand by again if I saw someone caught the way she was." Beatrice stared at him, emotions warring in her chest. Hope, terrifying and fragile. Fear that this was some trick, some new cruelty. Confusion that this stranger would care at all. "The debt was $200 when I started," she heard herself say, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "My father owed it for doctor bills and funeral costs. Thornton bought it from the undertaker and hired me to work it off. He said at $5 a month it would take me a while, but I could do it. But then he started charging me for room and board, for my clothes, for everything. Now he says I owe him nearly $700. I will never be free." Cole's hands tightened on his hat, knuckles going white. $700 for 3 years of labor. That is slavery with extra steps. "It is legal," Beatrice said bitterly. "I signed the papers. I agreed to the terms. Legal does not mean right." He looked toward the bar, then back at her. "What if I could get you out? Would you go?" The question hit her like a physical blow. Leave. Just walk away from 3 years of servitude, from the crushing weight of debt that defined every moment of her existence. It was impossible. It was insane. It was everything she had prayed for in the dark hours of the night when even hope felt like a luxury she could not afford. "How?" she whispered. "Let me worry about that. I just need to know if you want out. Because if you do, if you are willing to trust me, I will find a way." Beatrice looked into those gray eyes and saw absolute sincerity. This man, this stranger who had ridden into town just this afternoon, was offering her salvation. It made no sense. It was probably a trap or a dream she would wake from to find herself still scrubbing floors in the Silver Star. But standing there in the smoke-stained saloon with her hands raw and her heart broken, she could not bring herself to say no. "Yes," she breathed. "God help me, yes, I want out." Cole nodded once, sharp and decisive. "Then stay ready. It might take me a few days to arrange things, but I will get you free. I give you my word." "Why?" The question escaped before she could stop it. "Why would you do this for me? You do not even know me." His expression softened. "Because it is the right thing to do. And because when I look at you, I see someone who deserves better than this. Everyone deserves better than this." He settled his hat back on his head and turned to go, then paused and looked back. "What I said about my sister. Her name was Catherine. She was kind and smart and deserved the whole world. This is for her too. So she did not suffer for nothing." Then he was gone, walking out into the night, and Beatrice stood there with tears streaming down her face for the first time in months. They were not tears of despair this time. They were something else entirely, something that felt dangerously like hope. The next morning, Beatrice dragged herself to Potter's store as commanded. Her sleep had been restless, full of dreams about gray eyes and impossible promises. In the harsh light of day, she told herself that Cole Yancy had probably been drunk or foolish or both. He would come to his senses, realize that interfering in Thornton's business was a good way to get hurt, and ride out of Hatchita without a backward glance. She would be left here, same as always, except now she would have to live with the memory of what might have been. Potter put her to work immediately, hauling crates and stocking shelves. He leered at her when he thought she was not looking, made comments about her figure that she pretended not to hear. She kept her head down and worked, counting the hours until she could leave. Around noon, the store's bell chimed and Cole Yancy walked in. Beatrice nearly dropped the jar of preserves she was shelving. He caught her eye and gave a small nod, then turned to Potter. "Afternoon. I am looking to buy some supplies. Trail rations, coffee, maybe some cartridges if you have them." Potter brightened at the prospect of a sale and hurried to assist him. Beatrice continued her work, hyper-aware of Cole's presence in the small store. She heard him making small talk with Potter, asking casual questions about the town, the weather, business. He was smooth about it, friendly without being overly familiar, and Potter relaxed into the conversation. "Say, I heard Marcus Thornton owns quite a bit around here," Cole said as Potter measured out coffee beans. "Seems like a successful man." "That he is," Potter agreed. "Smart businessman. Not everyone appreciates his methods, but you cannot argue with results. He owns the saloon, a few mining claims, has stakes in several businesses around town. Does quite well for himself." "I imagine so. Saw he has that girl working for him, the one in here now." "That must be profitable, having someone tied to you like that." Potter glanced at Beatrice and lowered his voice, though she could still hear every word. "That one. More trouble than she is worth, if you ask me. Pretty enough, but too proud for her own good. Thornton keeps her in line, though. Man knows how to handle his property." Beatrice felt her face burn with humiliation. She focused on the shelves in front of her, arranging jars with meticulous care, willing herself not to react. "Seems harsh calling her property," Cole said mildly. "Thought it was just a work contract." "Same difference out here, friend. Girl signed on, she knew what she was getting into. Besides, where else would she go? Woman alone in this territory, no family, no money. Thornton did her a favor taking her on. Some favor." The words were quiet but sharp, and Beatrice heard the anger Cole was working to contain. Potter must have heard it too, because he changed the subject quickly. "So, these supplies. You planning a long trip? Maybe. Depends on how things go here." Cole finished his purchases and left without looking at Beatrice again. She told herself it was for the best, that any visible connection between them would only make Thornton suspicious. But part of her ached at his departure, at the loss of those kind eyes and that steady presence. The afternoon crawled by. Beatrice scrubbed the store's floor, cleaned the windows, reorganized the stockroom. Potter watched her work with calculating eyes, and she knew he was working up the courage to try something. She kept a heavy wrench within reach, just in case. As the sun started its descent toward the horizon, the store bell chimed again. Beatrice looked up from the floor she was mopping to see Marcus Thornton walk in, and her stomach dropped. "Potter," Thornton said by way of greeting. He looked at Beatrice with cold eyes. "Girl, get over here." She set aside the mop and approached, dread coiling in her gut. Something was wrong. She could see it in the set of Thornton's shoulders, the thin line of his mouth. "Yes, sir. Heard something interesting today," Thornton said conversationally. "Heard that our new friend Cole Yancy was asking questions about you, questions about your debt, about our arrangement. You know anything about that?" Beatrice's heart hammered. "No, sir. I barely spoke to him." "That is not what I asked. I asked if you knew why he would be so interested in your situation." "I do not know, sir. I swear it." Thornton studied her for a long moment, and she forced herself to meet his gaze without flinching. If he saw fear, he would know he was onto something. If he saw defiance, he would punish her for it. She tried to project nothing, to be as blank and unremarkable as possible. "Fine," Thornton said finally. "But I am warning you now, girl. If you are getting ideas, if you think some drifter is going to ride in here and save you, you better think again. You belong to me until that debt is paid, and it will be paid my way on my timeline. You understand?" "Yes, sir." "Good. Get back to work. Potter, we need to talk business." The two men moved to the counter, their voices dropping to murmurs Beatrice could not make out. She returned to her mopping, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the mop handle. Thornton was suspicious. If Cole tried anything now, it would only make things worse. Maybe she should find a way to tell him to forget the whole thing, to just leave while he could. But even as she thought it, she knew she would not. Could not. Because Cole Yancy had given her something more precious than gold. He had given her hope, and she would cling to that with both hands even if it destroyed her. That evening, back at the saloon, Beatrice worked in a haze of anxiety. Every time the doors swung open, she expected to see Cole walk in, expected Thornton to confront him, expected everything to fall apart. But the night passed uneventfully, and Cole did not appear. 2 more days crawled by in the same fashion. Beatrice worked, kept her head down, and tried not to think about gray eyes and impossible promises. She began to accept that Cole had thought better of his offer, that he had realized the danger and complexity of what he had proposed. She could not blame him. It had been foolish from the start. On the 3rd day, she was hauling water from the well behind the saloon when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned to find Cole Yancy standing there, and her heart leaped into her throat. "I am sorry it took so long," he said without preamble. "I needed to make sure I did this right." "Did what right?" Beatrice asked, setting down the heavy buckets. "Getting you free." He pulled a folded paper from his coat pocket. "I went to see the territorial judge in Deeming, showed him Thornton's contract with you, the accounting of your supposed debt. Turns out, charging you for basic room and board when you are working full-time to pay off a debt violates territorial labor laws. The whole contract is invalid." Beatrice stared at him, unable to process what he was saying. "What does that mean?" "It means legally you do not owe Thornton anything. The judge issued this writ invalidating the contract. You are free, Beatrice. As of this moment, you are free." The words did not make sense. They were too big, too impossible. Free. How could she be free when she had been trapped for so long? "He will never accept that," she whispered. "Thornton will fight it. He will say I stole from him, or he will make up some other charge. He will never just let me go. He does not have a choice. The law is the law, even out here." Cole's expression hardened. "I also made sure the judge knows to expect trouble from Thornton. Any attempt to continue holding you or to retaliate will result in charges against him. He is beaten, Beatrice. He just does not know it yet." She wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to believe. But 3 years of servitude had taught her that hope was a cruel thing, that every time she thought things might improve, they only got worse. "There is more," Cole said gently. "I know you have nowhere to go, no money to start over. I have a proposition for you if you will hear it." "What kind of proposition?" Beatrice asked warily. "I have a small ranch about a day's ride north of here. Nothing fancy, just a few 100 acres with good water and grass. I run cattle, break horses, do all right for myself. I could use help. Someone to cook, keep the house, maybe help with the horses if you are interested. I would pay fair wages, $20 a month plus room and board. Real room and board, not the kind Thornton was charging you for. $20 a month. It was more money than she had ever imagined having. More than that, it was honest work, freely chosen. It was a life, a real life, not this half-existence she had been enduring. Why would you do all this? she asked, her voice breaking. "The judge, the writ, the job offer. You do not even know me." Cole was quiet for a moment, his gray eyes searching her face. "I told you about my sister. What I did not tell you is that after she died, I made myself a promise. If I ever had the chance to help someone the way I could not help her, I would take it. No hesitation, no second guessing. This is me keeping that promise." "Is that the only reason?" The question slipped out before she could stop it, born from some reckless part of her that wanted to know if maybe, just maybe, there was more to his motivation than old guilt and a dead sister's memory. Something flickered in his expression. "No," he said quietly. "It is not the only reason. The truth is, from the moment I saw you in that saloon, saw the strength in you despite everything you have endured, I wanted to know you better. I wanted to see who you could be without Thornton's boot on your neck. Is that selfish? Maybe, but it is the truth." Beatrice felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. When was the last time someone had wanted to know her? When was the last time she had been valued for anything other than the work her hands could do? "What do I have to do?" she asked. "Come with me to see Thornton. Show him the writ. Pack whatever belongings you have and we leave. Today, if you are willing. Today." This very day, she could walk away from the Silver Star, from Marcus Thornton, from 3 years of misery and degradation. It was too much, too fast, and yet not fast enough. "I am willing," she said, and the words felt like a prayer answered. They walked back into the saloon together, and Beatrice felt like she was moving through a dream. The mid-morning crowd was sparse, just a few men drinking away their troubles. Thornton stood behind the bar, polishing glasses with a rag. He looked up as they entered, and his eyes narrowed. "Yancy, what brings you here this hour? And what is the girl doing with you? She should be working." "Mr. Thornton," Cole said, his voice calm and professional, "I have something you need to see." He handed over the writ from the judge. Thornton took it, his expression skeptical, and began to read. Beatrice watched his face change as he processed the words, saw anger flush his cheeks, saw his hands tighten on the paper. "This is ridiculous," Thornton spat. "Some territorial judge does not get to come in here and tell me my business. This girl owes me money, a legal debt that she contracted. I have every right to collect." "You had the right to collect the original $200 through fair labor," Cole corrected. "You did not have the right to create a system of perpetual servitude by charging her for necessities that should have been included as part of her employment." The judge was very clear about that. "This is your doing," Thornton said, jabbing a finger at Cole. "You have been here less than a week and you are already causing trouble. I should have run you out of town the moment I laid eyes on you. But you did not, and now it is too late. Beatrice is free to go. If you try to stop her, if you retaliate in any way, the judge has made it clear there will be consequences." Thornton's face was nearly purple now. He turned his fury on Beatrice, and she forced herself not to flinch. "You ungrateful little witch. I gave you a roof over your head when you had nothing, and this is how you repay me. Running off with the first drifter who shows you some attention. I am repaying you with 3 years of my life," Beatrice said, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. 3 years of labor that should have cleared my father's debt 10 times over. You made me a slave in all but name, Mr. Thornton, and I will not apologize for wanting to be free." "You will regret this," Thornton hissed. "Both of you. You think you can just waltz in here and make a fool of me. I have friends in this territory. You will not get far." "Then I guess we better start riding," Cole said evenly. "Beatrice, go get your things. We are leaving." Beatrice did not need to be told twice. She hurried to the tiny room behind the kitchen that had been hers for 3 years. It held a narrow cot, a battered trunk, and nothing else. Everything she owned fit into one small bag. 3 years of her life, reduced to a handful of threadbare dresses and a few precious keepsakes from her old life. Her mother's Bible, her father's pocket watch, a ribbon she had worn the day she taught her first class. She changed quickly out of her stained work dress into her least patched one, brushed her hair and pinned it up properly for the first time in months. Looking at herself in the cracked mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. Thin, pale, but with something new in her eyes. Hope, she realized. And determination. When she emerged, Cole was waiting by the door. Thornton had retreated behind the bar, radiating impotent fury. The few customers in the saloon were watching with undisguised interest, sensing drama. "Ready?" Cole asked. "More than ready." They walked out of the Silver Star together into the bright New Mexico sunshine. Beatrice took a deep breath of free air and felt something break loose in her chest, some tightness that had been there so long she had stopped noticing it. She was free. Against all odds, despite 3 years of despair, she was free. Cole led her to a hitching post where 2 horses waited. One was a rangy gelding, clearly his, and the other was a pretty mare with gentle eyes. "She is yours," Cole said, seeing her look. "I bought her yesterday. Figured you would need a horse if you are going to be living on a ranch." Beatrice ran her hand along the mare's neck, fighting back tears. "I have never owned a horse before." "Well, you do now. Her name is Daisy, and she is as sweet as they come. She will take good care of you." He helped her mount, his hands steady and respectful, then swung up onto his own horse. They rode out of Hachita at an easy pace, not running but not dawdling either. Beatrice kept expecting to hear Thornton's voice behind them, kept expecting some last-minute disaster to snatch away her freedom. But they reached the edge of town without incident, and the open desert spread before them like a promise. "You all right?" Cole asked after they had been riding for a while. "I think so. It does not feel real yet. It will. Give it time." They rode in comfortable silence for a while, the sun warm on Beatrice's shoulders, the rhythm of the horse soothing. She studied Cole from the corner of her eye, this strange man who had upended her entire world. He sat his horse like he was born to it, relaxed but alert, those gray eyes constantly scanning the horizon. "Can I ask you something?" she said finally. "Of course. Your sister, Catherine. What happened to her?" Cole was quiet for so long that Beatrice thought he would not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with old pain. "She got married young to a man who seemed decent. Turned out he was a drunk and mean with it. He beat her, controlled every aspect of her life, spent all their money on cards and whiskey. By the time I was old enough to understand what was happening and tried to help, she would not leave him. Said she had made her vows, that it was her duty to stay. He killed her during one of his rages when I was 23. She was only 25. "I am so sorry," Beatrice whispered. "Me too. I hunted him down, thought I would kill him. But when I found him, he was already dead, drinking himself to death in a flophouse in El Paso. So I had all this rage and grief and nowhere to put it. Spent a few years drifting, working ranches, trying to outrun the guilt. Eventually, I saved enough to buy my own place, tried to build something good, something Catherine would have been proud of. But I swore that if I ever saw someone trapped the way she was, I would not stand aside. I would not be too young or too scared or too late ever again." "You saved me," Beatrice said softly. "You know that, right? Whatever happens now, you saved my life today." Cole looked at her, and the emotion in his eyes made her breath catch. "You saved yourself, Beatrice. You survived 3 years that would have broken most people. You kept your dignity, your kindness. I just opened a door. You are the one walking through it." They rode until sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and gold. Cole led them to a sheltered spot near a small spring, good grass for the horses and a ring of stones suggesting others had camped here before. "We will stop here for the night," he said, dismounting. "My ranch is still about 6 hours north. We can make it tomorrow morning." Beatrice slid from her saddle, her legs stiff from the long ride. She had not ridden in years, and she could already feel where she would be sore tomorrow. But it was a good kind of pain, the pain of muscles used for something other than endless scrubbing and hauling. Cole set about making camp with practiced efficiency, unsaddling the horses, gathering wood for a fire. Beatrice wanted to help but found herself uncertain. For 3 years, her every action had been dictated by Thornton's commands. The freedom to choose, even something as simple as whether to gather wood or tend the horses, felt overwhelming. "You can just sit if you want," Cole said, noticing her hesitation. "You have had a long day. I want to help. I just do not know what to do first." He smiled, and it transformed his whole face, made him look younger and less careworn. "How about you handle the food then? There is jerky and hardtack in my saddlebag and coffee fixings if you want to make a pot." Cooking she could do. It was familiar grounding. She set up the small camp stove and got coffee brewing, laid out their simple meal. The domesticity of it was strange and wonderful. Just 2 people sharing a meal, no cruelty, no fear. They ate as the stars began to emerge, brilliant in the desert sky. Beatrice could not remember the last time she had just sat and looked at the stars. In Hatchita, the saloon's garish lights had drowned them out, and she had been too exhausted to care. "It is beautiful," she said softly. "It is. I never get tired of it, no matter how many nights I spend out here." "Tell me about your ranch. What is it like?" Cole leaned back, his coffee cup warming his hands against the cooling night air. "It is nothing fancy. Small house, needs some work, but it is solid. Got a barn, a corral, a chicken coop that is usually more trouble than it is worth. The land is good though, got a creek that runs year-round, plenty of grass. I run about 200 head of cattle, break horses on the side for extra money. It is peaceful, quiet. It sounds perfect. It can be lonely sometimes," he admitted. "I have a couple of hands who help during roundup, but mostly it is just me. That is part of why I was in Hatchita, looking for someone steady to help out. And then I saw you and, well, you know the rest." Beatrice set down her coffee cup and looked at him across the fire. "Can I ask you something else? And will you promise to be honest with me, always? Is this really just about your sister, about some promise you made yourself?" Cole held her gaze, the firelight dancing in his gray eyes. "I told you before that is part of it, but no, it is not just that. The truth is, Beatrice, from the moment I saw you, I felt something I have not felt in a long time. Maybe ever. You were standing there in that saloon doing work that should have broken you, and you held yourself with so much quiet dignity. You did not grovel, did not play up to Thornton. You just endured with this strength that took my breath away. I wanted to know you. I wanted to give you the chance to be whoever you were meant to be before Thornton and debt and grief crushed it out of you." "That is a lot to put on someone you just met," Beatrice said, but her heart was racing. "I know. And I do not expect anything from you, need you to know that. The job offer is real and it comes with no strings. You will have your own room, your own space. I am not rescuing you so you will owe me. I am doing it because it is right, and because I could not live with myself if I did not." "What if I want there to be strings?" The words escaped before she could stop them, reckless and terrifying. Cole went very still. "What are you saying?" Beatrice took a shaky breath. "I am saying that you are not the only one who felt something. When you looked at me in that saloon, it was the first time in 3 years someone saw me as a person instead of property. And when you came back, when you did not forget about me or decide I was too much trouble, it meant something. You have been nothing but kind and respectful and honest. Do you know how rare that is, how precious?" Beatrice, I am not saying I am in love with you, she interrupted. We have known each other less than a week, but I am saying I could be. I am saying I want the chance to find out, if that is something you want too. The silence stretched between them, loaded with possibility. Then Cole smiled, that wonderful transforming smile that made her stomach flip. I would like that very much, he said quietly. More than I can say. They talked late into the night, the conversation flowing easily now that they had laid their cards on the table. Cole told her about his childhood in Texas, his parents who had died when he was young, his struggles to build something of his own. Beatrice told him about her father, about her dreams of teaching, about the slow suffocation of working for Thornton. I used to pray every night, she confessed. I would get on my knees and beg God to send me a miracle some way out. After a while, I stopped because it seemed like nobody was listening. And then you walked into that saloon and I do not know, maybe somebody was listening after all. I am no miracle, Cole said, just a man trying to do right. You are a miracle to me. They finally bedded down on opposite sides of the fire, proper and respectable. But Beatrice fell asleep with a smile on her face for the first time in years. The next morning, they broke camp early and continued north. The landscape gradually changed, the harsh desert giving way to rolling grassland dotted with juniper and pinon. Beatrice felt herself relax with every mile between her and Hachita, between her and Thornton and 3 years of misery. Around noon, they topped a rise and Cole pointed ahead. There it is. Home. Beatrice followed his gaze and saw a small valley sheltered by low hills. A creek glittered in the sunlight and she could see a house, barn, and corrals clustered near a stand of cottonwoods. It was small and rough, nothing like the fine houses in the towns back east. But it was beautiful in its simplicity, its honesty. It is wonderful, she breathed. They rode down into the valley, and Beatrice took in details as they got closer. The house was adobe with a wooden porch, flowers growing wild in front. The barn was weathered but sturdy, and she could see cattle grazing in the distance. Chickens scratched in a yard near the house, and a dog came bounding out to greet them, barking joyfully. That is Scout, Cole said, dismounting. He is supposed to be a cattle dog, but mostly he just likes everyone and thinks his job is to be happy. Beatrice slid from her horse and immediately found herself surrounded by an ecstatic dog who seemed to have no concept of personal space. She laughed, the sound startling her. When was the last time she had laughed? Cole showed her around the property, pointing out the well, the vegetable garden that was more weeds than vegetables, the chicken coop with its dozen temperamental hens. Finally, they went into the house itself. It was dim and cool inside, a relief from the bright sun. The main room held a stone fireplace, a rough wooden table and chairs, shelves lined with books and supplies. There were 2 doors leading to other rooms. That is my room, Cole said, pointing to one door. This one is yours. He opened the other door to reveal a small bedroom with a real bed, a chest of drawers, a window with faded curtains. It was simple, but it was hers. Her own space, her own bed, her own door that she could close against the world. It needs work, Cole said apologetically. Fresh paint, new curtains, probably 100 other things. But it is yours, Beatrice, your sanctuary. She walked into the room and ran her hand over the quilt on the bed, feeling the careful stitches. Did your sister make this? She did. Before she got married, before everything went bad. I have kept it all these years. Seemed fitting that you should have it now. Beatrice felt tears prick her eyes again. She seemed to be crying constantly these days, but they were good tears, healing tears. Thank you, Cole, for everything. I do not know how I will ever repay you. You do not have to repay me. Just be here, be yourself, let yourself heal. That is enough." The days that followed fell into a gentle rhythm. Beatrice woke with the sun, made breakfast for herself and Cole, then set about putting the house to rights. It needed a woman's touch, that was clear. She scrubbed and organized, washed curtains and beat rugs, planted herbs in the garden. Cole worked with the cattle and horses, sometimes gone for hours, but always returning with stories about his day, asking about hers. They were careful with each other, polite and respectful, but Beatrice felt the awareness growing between them. The way Cole's eyes would linger on her when he thought she was not looking. The way her heart would skip when he smiled at her. They were circling each other like nervous horses, both wanting to close the distance but afraid to push too fast. 3 weeks after her arrival, Beatrice was in the garden pulling weeds when she heard a horse approaching. She looked up, shading her eyes, and her blood ran cold. Marcus Thornton sat astride a fine black horse, and he was looking at her with undisguised hatred. "So this is where you ended up," he said, dismounting. "Playing house with your savior." Beatrice stood, wiping her dirty hands on her apron. "You have no business here, Mr. Thornton. Please leave." "I will leave when I am good and ready." "You owe me, girl. 3 years of my time, my resources, my patience. Did you really think I would just let that go?" The judge said. "Damn what the judge said. Out here, law is what men make it, and I am here to collect what is mine." Cole emerged from the barn, clearly having heard the raised voices. He walked over with deceptive calm, but Beatrice could see the tension in his shoulders. "Thornton, you are trespassing." "Just having a conversation with my former employee. No crime in that." "There is when you are on my land uninvited and threatening a member of my household. I am going to ask you once to leave. If you refuse, I will make you leave, and you will not like how I do it." Thornton laughed, harsh and ugly. "You threatening me, Yancy?" "Because I have friends in this territory, men who owe me favors. Be a shame if something happened to this nice little ranch you have got here. Fire can spread so fast in this dry country." Cole's hand moved toward his gun, not drawing but making his readiness clear. "Get on your horse and ride out. Now. If I see you on my land again, if I hear you have been anywhere near Beatrice, I will not be as polite as I am being now." For a moment, Beatrice thought Thornton would push it, would force a confrontation that could only end badly. But something in Cole's eyes must have convinced him, because he mounted his horse with ill grace. "This is not over," he spat. "Not by a long shot." He wheeled his horse and galloped away, leaving them standing in tense silence. Beatrice realized she was shaking. "Are you all right?" Cole asked, turning to her. "I knew he would not let it go. I knew it." "Hey." Cole took her hands gently, his rough palms warm against her cold fingers. "He is all bluster. Men like Thornton only have power when people are afraid of them. You are not afraid anymore, are you?" "I am terrified," she admitted. "But you stood up to him anyway. That is real courage, Beatrice, being afraid but doing it anyway." She looked up into his gray eyes and felt some of the fear ease. He was right. She had stood her ground, had not cowered or begged. She was not that broken girl in the saloon anymore. She was becoming someone new, someone stronger. "What if he comes back?" she asked. "Then we will deal with it together. You are not alone anymore." The words settled into her heart like a benediction. Not alone. After 3 years of isolation, of facing every cruelty and hardship by herself, she was not alone. Cole kept his word. Over the following weeks, he taught Beatrice to shoot, to ride better, to defend herself. She proved an apt student, her determination overriding her initial nervousness with firearms. They worked together to fortify the ranch, fixing weak spots in fences, ensuring they had good sightlines from the house. Thornton did not return, but his shadow hung over them. Cole made inquiries in town, learned that Thornton was spreading rumors about him, trying to turn public opinion. But most people in the territory had heard about Beatrice's situation by now, and they had little sympathy for a man who had essentially enslaved a young woman. As summer deepened into fall, Beatrice found herself settling into ranch life in ways she had never imagined. She learned to milk the cow, to collect eggs without getting pecked, to coax vegetables from the stubborn desert soil. She learned to read the weather in the clouds, to judge a horse's mood from its ears, to cook over an open fire when they were out mending fence. And she learned Cole. Learned that he was quiet in the mornings until he had his coffee. That he sang to the horses when he worked with them, old songs in Spanish he had learned from a Mexican hand years ago. That he was scrupulously fair in all his dealings, that his word was his bond, that he would go hungry himself before he let someone else starve. She learned that he was kind, patient, and honorable to a fault, that he had nightmares sometimes about his sister and would wake in the dark hours pacing the porch, that he loved this land with a fierce devotion that took her breath away. And slowly, carefully, she fell in love with him. It happened in small moments. The way he thanked her for every meal, like it was a gift instead of her job. The way he asked her opinion on ranch matters and actually listened to her answers. The way he looked at her like she was something precious, something to be treasured. One evening in late October, they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky. The air had turned crisp with the promise of winter, and Beatrice had a shawl wrapped around her shoulders. Cole sat beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Always. Are you happy? With me being here, I mean. Has it been what you expected?" Cole turned to look at her, and the expression on his face made her heart race. "It has been better than I ever imagined. You have made this house a home, Beatrice. You have brought light and laughter to a place that was just empty rooms before. I wake up every morning grateful that you are here, and I go to sleep every night counting my blessings that you stayed." "I am happy too," she said softly. "Happier than I have been in years, maybe ever. You have given me a life, Cole. A real life where I make my own choices, where I am valued for who I am, not just what I can do. I do not know how to thank you for that. You do not have to thank me. Having you here is thanks enough." Beatrice took a breath, gathering her courage. "What if I want it to be more than that, more than just gratitude?" Cole went very still. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I love you, Cole Yancy. I am saying that these past months, getting to know you, building a life with you, have been the happiest of my existence. I am saying that if you feel the same way, I would like to stop pretending this is just an employer-employee arrangement. I would like it to be real." For a moment, Cole did not move, did not speak, and Beatrice felt panic rising. Had she misread everything? Was she making a fool of herself? Then he smiled, that beautiful transforming smile, and reached for her hand. "I have been in love with you since the day I walked into that saloon and saw you standing there like some kind of defiant angel in hell. I have been holding back because I did not want to rush you, did not want you to feel obligated. But if you are telling me you feel the same way, then yes. God, yes, I want this to be real." He pulled her into his arms, and Beatrice went willingly, finally closing the distance they had been maintaining for months. His lips found hers in a kiss that was gentle and reverent, full of all the words they had not said, all the careful restraint finally breaking. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me, Beatrice, make this official, be my wife, my partner, my everything." "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." They were married a month later in the small church in the nearest town, with a handful of neighbors and ranch hands in attendance. Beatrice wore a simple dress she had sewn herself, white cotton with lace at the collar, and carried wildflowers Cole had picked that morning. He wore his best suit, somewhat dusty from the ride but clean and pressed, and looked at her like she hung the moon. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Cole kissed her with such tenderness that Beatrice felt tears streaming down her face. Happy tears this time, tears of joy and hope and love that felt too big to contain. They held a small celebration back at the ranch, with music and dancing and food contributed by their neighbors. As the sun set and the stars emerged, Cole led Beatrice in a slow waltz on the porch, just the two of them moving together under the vast New Mexico sky. "I love you, Mrs. Yancey," he murmured against her hair. "I love you too. More than words can say." That night, they truly became husband and wife in every sense. Cole was gentle and patient, mindful of all she had endured. He took his time, making sure she felt safe, cherished, loved. When they finally came together, it was perfect in its imperfection, awkward and sweet and utterly right. Afterwards, lying in his arms in the darkness, Beatrice felt a peace settle over her that she had never known. This was home. This was where she belonged. Not because she was trapped or obligated, but because she chose it, chose him, chose this life they were building together. "What are you thinking?" Cole asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "That I am grateful, that I was praying for a miracle in that saloon and God sent me you, that I never imagined I could be this happy. I am the one who is grateful. You have given me purpose, Beatrice. A reason to build something that matters. I was just going through the motions before you. Now I wake up every day wanting to be better, to give you the life you deserve. You already have. This is everything I never knew I wanted." Winter came, cold and harsh, but the ranch house stayed warm. They spent the long evenings by the fire, reading to each other, planning for spring, just being together. Cole taught Beatrice to play chess, and she proved a quick study, beating him more often than not. She taught him some of the songs her father used to sing, and they harmonized together while the wind howled outside. In February, Beatrice realized she was pregnant. She told Cole one morning over breakfast, nervous about how he would react. They had not planned for a baby so soon, had barely adjusted to married life, but Cole's face lit up with such pure joy that her nervousness evaporated. "Truly, we are going to have a baby, truly. I am about 3 months along, I think." He swept her into his arms, spinning her around until she laughed and begged him to stop. "We are going to be parents. I am going to be a father. Oh God, Beatrice, I do not know how to be a father. We will figure it out together, just like everything else." And they did. As spring arrived and Beatrice's belly grew, they prepared for their new arrival. Cole built a cradle by hand, spending hours in the barn sanding and polishing until it was perfect. Beatrice sewed tiny clothes and blankets, her heart swelling with love for this child she had not yet met. Their neighbors, good people who had come to respect and care for the young couple, threw a celebration for them. They brought gifts and advice, the ranch women gathering around Beatrice to share their experiences and wisdom. She felt embraced by this community in a way she had never experienced in Hachita. In early September, on a clear morning when the light seemed especially golden, Beatrice went into labor. Cole rode for the midwife, an older woman named Hannah who lived on a nearby ranch. She arrived with calm efficiency and took charge of the situation. Cole paced outside like a caged animal, unable to sit still, until Hannah finally let him in to sit with his wife. He held Beatrice's hand through each contraction, murmuring encouragement, wiping her face with a cool cloth. "I am here," he kept saying. "I am here. You are so strong, my love. You can do this." As the sun set and painted the sky in shades of orange and red, their son came into the world with a healthy cry. Hannah cleaned him and placed him in Beatrice's arms, and she looked down at his tiny, perfect face with wonder. "He is beautiful," she whispered. "He is perfect," Cole agreed, his voice thick with emotion, "just like his mother." They named him James, after Beatrice's father, with the middle name of William after Cole's. Baby James was healthy and strong, with his mother's dark hair and his father's gray eyes. He was demanding and loud and the most perfect thing either of them had ever seen. The months that followed were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Beatrice learned to feed and soothe the baby, to function on little sleep, to love with a depth she had not known she was capable of. Cole was a devoted father, walking the floor with James when he was fussy, singing the old Spanish songs to help him sleep, looking at his son with such awe it made Beatrice's heart ache. They worked together to balance ranch duties with caring for their child. Beatrice would strap James to her back while she worked in the garden, and Cole built a small pen where the baby could play safely while they worked nearby. It was not easy, but it was good, honest work done with love. When James was 6 months old, Cole rode into town for supplies and came back with news. Marcus Thornton had been arrested for fraud and embezzlement. Apparently, several other people whose debts he had bought had come forward with similar complaints to Beatrice's. The territorial authorities had investigated and found extensive evidence of illegal practices. Thornton was awaiting trial and likely to spend years in prison. "It is over," Cole said, holding Beatrice close as she processed the news. "He cannot hurt you anymore. He cannot hurt anyone anymore." Beatrice felt a weight lift that she had not realized she was still carrying. For months, she had been waiting for the other shoe to drop, for Thornton to find some way to exact revenge. Now that would never happen. She was truly, finally free. "Good," she said quietly. "I hope he gets everything he deserves." "He will. Justice might be slow out here, but it comes eventually." As James grew from baby to toddler, the ranch prospered. Cole's reputation for breaking horses with patience and skill spread, and he had more work than he could handle. Beatrice kept the books and managed the household, her organizational skills proving invaluable. They hired a couple of steady hands to help with the cattle, good men who became like family. On their 3rd wedding anniversary, Cole gave Beatrice a beautiful mare he had trained himself. "She is yours," he said. "I thought maybe you would like to ride out with me sometimes when we can get someone to watch James." Beatrice threw her arms around him. "I love it. I love you. These 3 years have been the best of my life." "Mine too. You saved me, you know. I was just existing before you came along. Now I am living." They stood on their porch, watching James play in the yard with Scout, and Beatrice marveled at how much her life had changed. 5 years ago, she had been trapped in servitude, praying desperately for a miracle. Now she had a husband who loved her, a healthy son, a home that was truly hers. "You ever think about going back?" Cole asked. "To Hachita, I mean. Not to stay, but just to see how much has changed, sometimes. But I do not need to. That part of my life is over. This is who I am now." 2 years later, their daughter was born. They named her Catherine Grace, honoring both Cole's sister and the grace that had brought them together. She was smaller than James had been, with her mother's delicate features and a stubborn streak a mile wide. James, now 3, was fascinated by his baby sister. He would sit next to her cradle for hours, telling her stories, bringing her toys. "When she is bigger, I am going to teach her to ride," he announced importantly. "I am sure you will," Beatrice said, smoothing his dark hair. "You are going to be the best big brother." Life settled into a beautiful rhythm. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. They added more land, built a bigger barn, upgraded the house with glass windows and a proper kitchen. Beatrice started a small school, teaching the children from neighboring ranches the basics of reading and writing, finally fulfilling her old dream. Cole watched her work with the children with such pride. "Look at you, Teacher Yancy, making dreams come true." "Our whole life is a dream come true," she said. "Sometimes I still cannot believe this is real. It is real, every beautiful, messy, perfect bit of it." On their 10th wedding anniversary, they threw a big celebration. Their friends and neighbors came from miles around, bringing food and music and laughter. James and Catherine, now 8 and 5, ran wild with the other children, their joy infectious. As the party wound down and the stars came out, Cole took Beatrice's hand and led her away from the crowd to their favorite spot overlooking the valley. "10 years," he said softly. "10 years since I walked into that saloon and saw the woman who would change my life." "I was not much to look at that day," Beatrice said with a small smile. "Worn down, afraid, barely holding on. You were everything. You were strength and grace and quiet courage. You were my future, even if I did not know it yet. You were my miracle. You were the answer to prayers I had almost stopped praying. You gave me my life back, Cole. You gave me everything." He pulled her close, kissing her with the passion and tenderness that had only grown deeper over the years. "We gave each other everything. That is how it works when it is right." They stood there together under the stars, the sounds of celebration drifting up from the house, their children's laughter mixing with music and conversation. Below them, the ranch spread out in the moonlight, the home they had built together through hard work and love. Beatrice thought about that desperate girl in the saloon, scrubbing floors and praying for deliverance. She thought about Cole riding into town, seeing an injustice and refusing to look away. She thought about all the small choices and big moments that had brought them to this perfect point. "What are you thinking?" Cole asked, as he had so many times over the years. "That I would live through it all again, every moment of pain and fear if it meant ending up here with you. That suffering has meaning when it leads to something this beautiful. You are beautiful. Our life is beautiful. Our children are beautiful. I am the luckiest man alive." 3 more children followed over the years, twin boys, Michael and Daniel, born when Catherine was 7. And finally, another daughter, Sophie, who arrived when Beatrice was 36, and they thought they were done having babies. Their house grew to accommodate the growing family, adding rooms and noise and laughter. The ranch flourished under their combined efforts, becoming one of the most successful in the territory. They employed several families, treating them fairly and with respect, creating a community based on mutual support rather than exploitation. Cole taught all his children to ride, to work, to value integrity above all else. Beatrice taught them to read, to think, to see the humanity in everyone. Together, they built a legacy of kindness and hard work. James grew into a fine young man, taking over more of the ranch operations as Cole's hair turned gray. Catherine became a teacher herself, opening a real schoolhouse in the growing town nearby. The twins were inseparable, working together to expand the ranch's horse breeding program. And little Sophie, their surprise blessing, inherited her mother's determination and her father's steady calm. As Beatrice aged, she never forgot where she had come from. She made it her mission to help others trapped in situations like hers had been. She worked with the territorial authorities to strengthen labor protections, testified in court cases, and opened her home to women who needed sanctuary. Cole supported her fully, proud of her compassion and courage. "You are still saving people," he told her once. "Still being that light in the darkness. I am just paying forward what you did for me, one person at a time, one life at a time." On their 25th anniversary, their children threw them a surprise celebration. The ranch was filled with friends, family, people whose lives had been touched by the Yancy's generosity and kindness. There were speeches and toasts, stories and laughter. Cole stood to say a few words, his hand finding Beatrice's as naturally as breathing. 25 years ago, I rode into a dusty town on my way to somewhere else. I had no plans to stay, no intention of getting involved. But then I saw a woman who needed help, and I could not look away. Best decision I ever made. Beatrice, you have made every day of these 25 years a gift. You have given me a family, a purpose, a life filled with love. I would do it all again in a heartbeat. Beatrice stood beside him, tears streaming down her face. I prayed for a miracle in that saloon. I was at the end of my rope, ready to give up hope. Then you walked in and everything changed. You bought my freedom, yes, but more than that, you showed me what real love looks like. You showed me that I was worth fighting for, worth believing in. These 25 years have been the answer to every prayer I ever prayed. I love you, Cole Yancy, today and always. They kissed while their children and friends cheered. Two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful from broken pieces. The years continued to pass, gentler now. Cole and Beatrice handed over more of the ranch operations to their capable children and took time to just be together. They would ride out to their special spot overlooking the valley, watching sunsets and counting stars like they had in the beginning. You have any regrets? Cole asked her once. Beatrice thought about it seriously. I regret the pain I went through with Thornton. I regret the years I lost to fear and servitude, but I do not regret the journey because it brought me to you. Every hard step led me home. Home, Cole repeated softly. That is what you are to me. My home, my heart, my everything. They grew old together, their love deepening and maturing like fine wine. Cole's hair went completely white, and Beatrice's hands developed arthritis, but they still held hands on the porch every evening. They still laughed at each other's jokes, still looked at each other with love that had survived decades and trials. Their grandchildren filled the ranch with new life and energy. Beatrice told them stories about the old days, about the Wild West when it was still truly wild. She told them about their grandfather's courage, about how one person standing up for what was right could change everything. Cole told them about their grandmother's strength, about how she survived things that would have broken lesser people. He told them that true strength was not about never being afraid, but about being terrified and doing the right thing anyway. Together, they taught their grandchildren about love, about family, about building something that would outlast them. On a perfect spring morning when Beatrice was 68, she woke in Cole's arms as she had for over 30 years. The sun was just rising, painting their bedroom in soft gold light. She could hear the ranch waking up outside, the sounds of family and life and love. Good morning, beautiful, Cole murmured, his voice still rough with sleep. Good morning yourself, handsome. They lay there together, comfortable in the silence, in the knowledge of each other that came from decades of partnership. Cole, yes, love, thank you for everything. For seeing me when I was invisible, for fighting for me when I could not fight for myself, for building this life with me, for loving me. He tightened his arms around her. Beatrice, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. Thank you for trusting me, for loving me back, for making every day an adventure. They rose and dressed, moving with the ease of long practice. They walked out onto the porch where they had shared so many sunrises, so many dreams. The valley spread before them, green and alive, the ranch bustling with activity. James was already out working with the horses. Catherine was arriving with her own children for a visit. The twins were repairing a fence in the distance. Sophie was in the kitchen starting breakfast, her young husband helping her. Look at what we built, Beatrice said softly. Look at what you built, Cole corrected. I just provided the opportunity. You created all this love, this family, this legacy. We created it together. That is what marriage is, building something bigger than either person could make alone. They stood together, watching their family, their ranch, their life unfold before them. And Beatrice thought about that girl in the saloon, scrubbing floors with raw hands, praying for deliverance. She thought about the miracle that had walked through those doors in the form of a quiet cowboy with gray eyes and an honest heart. She thought about every moment between then and now, the struggles and triumphs, the tears and laughter, the ordinary days that had woven together into an extraordinary life. "I love you," she said, as she had said countless times before and would say countless times again. "I love you too," Cole replied, as constant as the sunrise, as sure as the mountains. They stood on their porch, hand in hand, and watched a new day begin. Their story had started with a prayer and a miracle, with desperation and courage. It had become something neither could have imagined, something richer and deeper and more beautiful than any dream. From a cruel employer's saloon to this porch, this family, this love. From a prayer whispered in darkness to a life lived in the light. It was more than a happy ending. It was a happy lifetime, still unfolding, still growing, still blessed. And it was exactly, perfectly, miraculously enough.